Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel here where we always talk about the Beatles, the group years, the solo years. We talk to everybody, whether they're authors, whether they're musicians, podcasters, DJs, you name it, Beatle fans. They're all welcome right here on my channel. And Luca Perasi's been with us here several times. He's also been on my other podcasts like Talk More Talk. He's always a great guest to have. You know him probably most of all for his couple of books on Paul McCartney called Music is Ideas. Do I have a copy here? Well, here's one of them. He has two volumes, and the second one goes up through 2012. He also put out a book on Band on the Run. He most recently put out this book on Ringo. I play the piano if it's in C. But even more recently, he put out a new book on Paul's album called Press to Play. This is the book right here. And once again, we welcome Luca back to Ken Michaels Radio.
Thanks, Ken. It's always a pleasure to be with you and discuss all these marvels of Paul's music and even Ringo. Last time I was with you. So thanks again. And let's dive into Press to Play.
Okay, well, my first question is the most obvious, which is why this particular album? Now, you already did one on Band on the Run, like I just said, but why pick this specific album of all of Paul's albums or any solo Beatle album to do a book on?
Because it's overlooked mostly by many people, not by you, for example, but it's the worst seller probably in Paul's career. So over the years, I came to appreciate very much the album. And so at some point, I listened and re-listened to it many times. And I like it. And so I thought, well, I think it's worth because there's many aspects to be discovered. And so I said, well, maybe people sometimes um, complain about the fact that okay, we already know everything about Band on the Run. It's been discussed to death, all
Hmm,
these kind of things. So I wanted a challenge, and so challenge even myself. And so I said, well, let's try to build something about press play, about this period of Paul's career, which was not the easiest one. And then I have put together new interviews with Carlos Salomar, which I have interviewed way back, but I got a new one with him recently, and Hugh Padgham. That was a very important, obviously, person that took part in the album. And so I said, well, there's enough material uh, to build a book on.
right. One of the highlights for me in reading this book are all the quotes from the various participants, like you just said, Hugh Padgham, Carlos Alomar. Did you ever get to talk to Eric Stewart at all?
No, Eric, these days is not available. At least is not available through his website, through a website or any other contact. I have contacted him way back many years ago, but then for some reason it was not possible to arrange an interview. I had Jerry Marotta, which I've interviewed way back. And then I dusted off this interview to add some quotes that were not published in previous books. So I think there's enough to to discover, and so these people were in the studio with Paul, so they were able to discuss with me uh, basically and mainly musical aspects.
Yeah. I interviewed Jerry Marotta at the time when Press to Play came out. And I just remember I did this at the radio station that I was at, and he referred to a song called Back to Pepperland. And I thought he was referring to Return to Pepperland. So, as you indicate in your book, that was really like a working title for Pretty Little Head.
Yeah, it seems so. Never been really disclosed, but I think it's this one because he talked about something like a jam with Paul was playing drums. So it's definitely Pretty Little Head.
Hmm. Okay.
Or maybe it was not a working title. Maybe it was just the way, I don't know, Paul used to call the song at the time in the studio. Who knows? You know, these kind of things are really maybe difficult to label a working title or whatever else. But it's Pretty Little Head most likely.
So there's a lot of different chapters in your book that go through the background leading up to the album, the recording of the album, the critical reception of the album, how it did on the charts, all that kind of information. So let's get a little bit into the background first. You do say George Martin had suggested to Eric Stewart that he should produce Paul's next album. And also Linda asked Eric to co-write with Paul. But ironically, Paul never did this. Paul didn't ask
Mhm.
to co-write with him. Paul didn't ask Eric to produce or co-produce with him, which I found interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting aspect that I highlight in the book. For these two roles, Paul did not ask directly. I don't know which is the reason. Sometimes Paul um, likes to be helped, let me say, and so I think this was the case. Maybe he wants the pressure not to be too high on these people. So if you have someone else asking on behalf of you, maybe it's better. Although Eric Stewart, was not the last one on earth, and it's a very experienced producer, great songwriter, great vocalist. Had everything that needed to work with Paul. But maybe it's just a different way of relating to people. It was interesting also for me, and that's why I've put it clear in the book that in these two for these two roles, Paul was helped, let me say, by George Martin and Linda.
Yeah. The difficult thing in telling this story, and it's a fascinating story, is that Eric Stewart was under the impression that he was going to be the producer. And
Well, I
once
mean, yeah.
that's how he's told the story before. And yet you also tell the Hugh Padgham side of things. At one point, Eric says in your book that Hugh had threatened that he would leave the project if he wasn't the sole producer, and Hugh denied that.
Mm. Yeah, the co-production issue is one of the key aspects of the story behind Press to Play. And well, I don't want to disclose too much because then the readers have to go through the pages. But you know, uh, both sides of the story, to some extent, are true because we know that Paul and Eric started recording together without Hugh Padgham.
Right.
So they did some recordings during the month of March 1985 with Martin Chambers on drums. So that was a group of sessions about which we don't know much. We had just one song, I think, that was released so far, which is Twice in a Lifetime, which anyway was conceived and recorded for a special project because it was for a film, for a movie. We don't know much about the other recordings, but if we put together the words that Eric said about a different approach that Paul wanted to have for the album, so going back to the basics and stuff, he was referring most likely to this first batch of sessions. Then you came in, and since you is an engineer and a producer, we can really also think about this thing that they started the sessions without you, then you came in, and could have could have been that Eric thought about Hugh Padgham only as engineer. You know, there was some miscommunication during the sessions, definitely. So at some point, something happened, and I don't know if it's true or not. Uh, Eric went to Paul and tried to clarify the situation or something like that. Many things happen in the studio. It's like being in an office. There's miscommunications in offices between employees and stuff, executives that say something, and one employee understand this, the other understands that, and it's not that different when it comes to studio relationships. It could be a problem of miscommunications, but my opinion is that putting together all these things, we have two different sessions. The first one started in March. The second started in April with Hugh Padgham. And Hugh Padgham was co-producer and engineer in his records that he did just before I Press to Play. So I think this double role was very clear even
Hmm.
at the time.
Well, one thing that doesn't help in explaining the situation is Paul hasn't really discussed it publicly, why there was a problem
Yeah.
between the two of them.
No, but he said just one thing which I find interesting. So he said that he led Eric to believe that he was going to co-produce the album.
Hmm.
That's a quite a specific statement. So it's a problem of communication, definitely. So if Paul uh, talk about himself and says, "Well, maybe it was my fault," uh, maybe we can say, "All right, Paul, this is the explanation." Maybe not. Maybe it's just a way to, you know, you get the blame on yourself, and maybe it's better for all the other people involved.
Well, yeah, even Eric has said, well, he gives himself credit for doing a lot of the production on the album anyway.
Well, he was credited with a special contribution or something like that in the liner notes of Press Play. Um, it's difficult to understand uh, who did what, but having I've interviewed you for this book for 2 hours,
Hmm.
and I mean we talk about mainly uh, specific topics about music and production styles and stuff, instruments, choice of instruments, things like that. So I don't think that you uh, ha- had had a small part in this project or whatever. Probably Eric contributed some suggestion. Maybe they say, okay, let's add another guitar or something like that. But the this kind of things are very difficult to really understand uh, where something ends and where someone else uh, someone else's work is coming in. The limits are very difficult to understand and define.
Hmm. I'm not saying that Eric said that he did all the production. I just think that he
No,
wanted
no.
some credit for it. And also,
Yeah, but sorry to interrupt. Yeah, but maybe they recorded something and he was involved as a co-producer, and then maybe they erased the recordings. It's not easy to understand which parts they recorded and which parts were redone. This is the example of Angry that
Mm,
Eric Stewart mentioned. And he said, well, we recorded the basic track, we recorded the vocals, but then the basic track was uh, was redone from scratch,
hmm
but the vocals were retained. So it's an example of how much it can occur in the studio when you did a take, then you wanted to erase the take, you want to do a new take. You never know.
mm.
And these sessions were very long.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. But it's always interesting to point out that with Eric, he always felt that the material was strong. He liked the songs that he wrote with Paul. He didn't like the production on the album. And it was the exact opposite with Hugh. Hugh
Yeah,
liked the material. He said he was underwhelmed when Paul presented him with the demos of him and Eric. And he's fine with the production of the album. He wasn't being critical of his production, but it's two complete opposites right there.
yeah, yeah. When something doesn't click between people, that could be the result. I mean, whatever the reason is. Uh, if you ask for my opinion, I think the songs are better than with than than we think, or even than you thought, because I like the songs. There are very, very good songs, and I don't want to blame the production of Hugh Padgham, because I like the production. I mean, it's a completely different from what Paul has done in his career. So we don't have to say that this production is dated and stuff. Yeah, it's very 80s. Hence the title of my book, that unmistakable 80s sound. But it also aims to do something different, and so that's why I wanted to explore the album such in depth.
Yeah, I've said many times how much I love this album and I admire Paul for trying to do something different. As far as the experimental side of him, like Talk More Talk or Pretty Little Head, there are signs of stuff like that, say from McCartney too, and then later on albums like Driving Rain and with the Fireman. So, this was right there in the middle of the 80s when I think that, Paul was looking for a new direction. He didn't know who to pick as a producer. He took the safe route with George Martin, although he got great results right there with Tug of War, for example. But he I don't know exactly how Hugh Padgham entered the picture. Do you know, was it his management contacting Hugh, or did Paul just say, well, I like the work he did on Genesis and the Police and Phil
Yeah,
Collins and those people?
yeah. Paul is always very keen on listening to what's happening. You know, even to these days, he's got people that prepare him cassettes or I don't know, playlists of
Mm,
songs to listen to, because you cannot stay in touch with the musical trends if you want to do it, and not listening to many things. You need to listen to albums and stuff. So Paul has always been very curious, and so yeah, he was definitely interested in the drum sound that he was capable to come up with. And so that was the key of the choice. And then you was contacted by Paul's manager. So that was definitely an interest from Paul about the sound of the drums specifically. That's it.
And you certainly notice it throughout this album. I want to read a couple of quotes here that I love from Eric Stewart about Paul. He said, "I've never met a person with so many ideas in my life." He also said, "Many people have said that the songs weren't strong enough because Paul didn't have John Lennon. But if you find what happened in all the Beatles writings, you find that many of the great songs weren't written by the two of them," which is true. And he also said the lyrics and the music were written evenly between the two of them. So, what do you think about what Eric just said about when people criticize Paul for his songs because he doesn't have John there to collaborate?
Uh, you know, for many people, maybe it's the easiest thing to do or to say. To say, oh, there's not John Lennon is not with Paul, so everything else is not at the same level. Which I mean, uh, we all know who was John Lennon and how much important was for Paul. And it's true what Eric said about the fact that they were writing separately, but we also know that when Paul presented the song and knew that John was with him listening to his new song, the simple fact that John was just in front of him uh, was was an important factor anyway.
Hmm.
So you can say, okay, I wrote it on my own, but then John at some point had to listen to the new creations of Paul,
Hmm.
and the other way around. So this role of I don't know how to describe it or to label. Uh, it's also something that pushes you uh, to your limit. So, and Paul was very conscious of that, regardless of the fact that they were writing separately since quite some time. Then maybe in some occasion, John added the lyric or Paul added the lyric, something like that. The rules of music or songwriting are not set in stone. You can say it's a Lennon McCartney thing just because of a verse or just because of okay, let's change this chord. So you can say okay, it's something that I feel it's important, and so yeah, anyone that collaborated with Paul after John Lennon had to bear this this thing. And well, the songs, as I was saying, the songs are not bad. And I like the songs that he co-wrote with Eric Stewart. I think there are some interesting things. Again, something different. Uh, with Paul, I think mainly it's the issue could be personalities, and I think even Eric admitted that is not the strongest personality in the world, and this could affect the final result. It was different with Elvis Costello. We all know that Elvis is, as Paul said, very opinionated,
Hmm.
as it's a different kind of collaboration. Uh, Eric has got a maybe a style which is more similar to that of Paul compared to Elvis Costello. Elvis Costello is a river of words, strange chords, all the things that Paul at times doesn't like, you know. And so two different personalities, two different kind of songwriters. Eric is more similar to Paul, and that that could be a risk.
It's interesting because yes, it's true. You can look at a Paul McCartney song like Let It Be and say it's Paul's song, but if John didn't like it, it wouldn't have gone out. Same thing
Yeah,
with that John wrote if Paul didn't like it. They would be critical of each other and they'd either accept songs like, you've heard a million times Paul talk about Hey Jude and the movement you need is on your shoulders, and he
yeah,
thought it was a horrible line and John liked it. Well, it may have changed if John didn't like it. So there was input there on that level,
yeah.
even if John didn't write any part of the song. But yeah, there's still collaboration in some way. But I also understand the other side of looking at it that, if it's a song like that, that Paul still wrote the whole song anyway. So it still
Mhm.
belongs to the songwriter, and yet it belongs to the team and the group too at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And I really I love the work that Paul did with Eric Stewart, and I wish he did more with him because songs like Footprints, and I love Tough on a Tightrope, which is very, very overlooked.
Oh
Stranglehold,
yeah.
it's a lot of great stuff on this album. Um, one of the things that's brought out here in the book is that Paul wanted to be in a band again. And I love the fact that you said, because this was a three-piece for the most part on the album with him, Eric Stewart, and Jerry Marotta. And then you brought up, well, Ram was like that,
Hmm.
and Band on the Run was like that in a
Yeah.
way. Although with Press to Play, you still had Eddie Rayner coming in on keyboards, and you still had Carlos Alomar coming in on guitar on some songs, but basically it was a trio.
Yeah, I mean, with Paul and the way he records the songs, it's very important to separate the basic tracks from the overdubs.
Mm,
So, and what Paul really likes to do is having a good basic track, and so it's very important. It's a very important part of the process. So, having a trio is, well, it's a kind of a uh, special dimension for a group. Is very limited to some extent. But Paul has done the same for Ram. It was a trio, and he overdubbed the bass after the basic tracks.
right.
Uh, the same things that he did on Press to Play. He overdubbed the bass. He never played the bass except for a couple of songs, maybe. But the process was mainly to have Paul on guitar or piano, and then having his bass added later. Band on the Run was different because the trio was a forced trio in that case. In this case, for Press to Play, it was a choice. So let's um, let's have a new drummer, Jerry Marotta, very energetic playing. Let's have Eric, which is a guitar player. He could handle keyboards as well. He's a singer, so on paper it was a very good trio. So that could lead to a successful album.
Mm, I sure wish it was much more successful. When you talk about the early sessions in March of '85, Martin Chambers was actually the drummer on those sessions. And it's kind of interesting. Paul seems to like to take musicians away from Chrissie Hynde through the years. I don't know what this pattern is, but later with Robbie McIntosh and
Hmm. Hmm.
so it's just kind of interesting that he chose Martin Chambers, and they worked on, as you said, Twice in a Lifetime, which I always loved as a song. Um, and then because of Hugh Padgham, he brought in Jerry Marotta because he knew
Hmm.
Jerry working with Peter Gabriel, and fantastic drummer right there who added a lot to the album. So it was a very powerful trio there.
Hmm. Oh yeah, I love the drumming of Jerry throughout the album. I think it's kind of unique within Paul's career. I think this playing style is not that frequent uh, within Paul's career.
Hmm. I kind of want,
it adds a dimension. You know, it's when the drums kick in, you can really say it's different, right?
yeah, certainly on, I love the drumming on Stranglehold and Press, you know,
Yeah.
and it's nice to have someone with a different style in there. Although he does say that he kind of felt like a session musician, Jerry,
Hmm.
on the album, because Paul told him what to play.
Yeah, but because I mean, Jerry Marotta is a fantastic drummer and is also has a strong personality. So he said, well, because one of my ambitions was to being a Paul McCartney myself, is a composer. I mean, he's not only a drummer who sits and play the drums,
Mm,
he's a composer as well. So he does many great things in the music field, including composing. So that's why at times it felt a bit restricted and stuff. But you know, when it comes to Paul, I think the rules are clear. Who's the boss or who's the main artist? You know, it's a Paul McCartney album, and I don't know how many other um, musicians could reclaim a different spot when it comes to Paul. It's not easy, yeah?
mm. Well, depending on who you talk to, some musicians will say that Paul let him play what he wanted to play if he had a good idea. So sometimes he's receptive to what musicians' ideas are. It's not always
Mhm.
whatever's in Paul's head. So, I mean, someone like Denny Seiwell will say that to me and Lawrence Juber.
Yeah.
So it's not clear across the board that way with every music. But I think Paul's he has very definite ideas and he knows how he wants a song to sound and be arranged in his head. And so, he will listen to other ideas and accept them too.
Yeah. Well, you know, my point is not that Paul is not listening to other people. Sometimes he said, okay, I want this to be done exactly like that. Some other times he said, no, okay, I accept your idea. So he's very open. Uh, it's also it depends also from the musician himself. I mean, maybe Jerry, because of his personality, because of his skills, not only as a drummer, maybe he felt. I mean, I don't need to be told
Mm,
what I have to do, or you know, it's also a matter of personalities gelling uh, uh, with someone else. So it's not an issue, but you know, Paul knows uh, what to do when he feels that someone else has got a better idea. I'm sure he accept it.
mm.
It it would be uh, stupid to do the contrary. And Paul is a very intelligent man, a musician, you know.
But one of the things that I like about the book is that you show the human element of some of these musicians, like Hugh Padgham, for example. I mean, here's somebody who was one of the hottest producers and engineers of that time, and he didn't like the songs that Paul wrote. And he's saying,
Mhm.
who am I to go tell Paul McCartney that these aren't good considering his track record? Maybe I should listen to them some more and maybe I'll get a better idea and maybe I'll change my mind. So here he is, he has this success, on his back, Hugh Padgham, but he's a little apprehensive, thinking, well, this is someone that has so many more years of experience, so much more history to back him up. How do I tell this person I'm not crazy about these songs, some of these songs?
Again, it's a human element. It's different personalities. You himself said that he's an agreeable person. So it's not one that raises his voice and say, "Oh, okay, this doesn't work." So it's not that kind of type. And he said that. I'm not saying that. He said that.
Mhm.
So does this approach work with Paul? It depends. It depends. If you are George Martin, it worked in the case of George Martin. George Martin is not. It was not a kind of producer that was going to say, Paul, this uh, is not really working, but stay in this with maybe a harsh kind of tone, you know, is very, I don't know, mellow, is very gentle.
Mhm.
The choice of the words is the right one. The opposite was Nigel Godrich. Nigel didn't didn't want to do like that, so because it's a different personality. But
Right.
it worked. I think it works if you choose the right words, but expressing your um, ideas. It works. If you are rude to some extent, it works. It doesn't work when it's something in the middle. So if you deal with a personality like McCartney, don't do something which is in the middle. You have to choose if you want to do. Uh, well, I don't know if it's agreeable. It's the right word, but say uh, gentle. Maybe it's a right word in my mind now,
More
or
diplomat.
you diplomatic. But you have to. Well, Paul has to understand what's behind your words. Or on the other side, you have to be very direct, even brutal. If you are brutal, Paul is going to listen to you. That's simple as that.
Well,
No, nothing in the middle, nothing in the middle, because he will, he will not, he will end the relationship, or he will turn into something not satisfying, because he's very aware of the fact that people know who he is. And so if you are in awe of him, then this does not do any favor to the music. And
sure.
it's very, uh, I mean, the fear of Paul is, okay, we are working together and I want the album to be good, very good. So if the truth doesn't come out, the album won't be very good. And that's what he has in his mind.
Well, you do bring up the one instance which a lot of people have repeated, where Eric Stewart said to Paul that a certain song needed to be perfected, and he went to Hugh with it, and Hugh said that the song wasn't good enough, and Paul went to him and said, "When was the last time you wrote a number one record?"
Yeah, that's probably a prime example of what we were talking about before. So this kind of passive aggressive environment at the time between these three people, that's a dangerous thing. I mean, it's always better to be clear in the communication, but you cannot force people to change themselves or their style of communication. That's it. It's very difficult. You can work on yourself and say, well, I got to be more clear when I express my ideas, but then you have the opportunity of a lifetime working with Paul, and
Hmm.
maybe you think, oh, okay, I'm going to say this, I'm going to say that. Maybe I will ruin the relationship. Maybe I will ruin the work. Maybe I will not work with him anymore. Blah blah blah. These kind of things. But in the end, I think it's better. It pays more to be clear.
Like I said, just, be diplomatic when you say these things. That's all. I think that's a key thing. Um, one thing that I found interesting is that um, Eric Stewart said that he felt like this album was in limbo, not just because of the fact that it took so long to finish, but Paul had a habit of stockpiling songs without finishing all the overdubs. I can understand how another musician would get kind of frustrated with this. It's like one song after another you're recording, but you're not finishing them. So just knowing that is the way that Paul liked to work, at least
Hmm.
this time, because he had a lot of songs, and I found that interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's part of the process, and it's what I like to explore in my books. So as I was telling before, basic tracks are one thing, then the overdub. It's another. It's another process, and then they chose the musicians very carefully for the overdubs. So you mentioned Eddie Rayner, which is a very important part throughout the album. There's Carlos Salomar, big names, and I was very happy to delve into this overdub parts uh, in my interview with Carlos because there are many nuances also in the guitar sounds that are very interesting in the album. So that was a great time I spent with Carlos talking about all the guitars that he added.
Right. Yeah, I found that very interesting too, because he was just saying how important it was to play the right part. Sometimes he would do a call and answer thing on guitar, but don't overplay. Don't try to steal the spotlight away from Paul. You know?
Yeah, well, a musician must be intelligent enough to understand that not all the songs are the same. So you can be the best player in the world, but if a song just needs a light arpeggio, do a light arpeggio. And if another song requires two or three different guitar sounds, you add two or three different guitar sounds instead of a big solo that takes a spotlight. Maybe it's not needed. And we all know that Paul likes to play guitar a lot. So we have many examples of Paul playing lead guitar in this album. Well, Press is Paul on lead guitar. Footprints has got this fantastic Spanish guitar solos in the beginning and at the end. So you have to compete, let me say, with Paul himself to some extent. And so when you listen to a song, uh, having adding the right part is more important than trying to impress Paul McCartney.
Right.
The song is the key. That's first the song, then the guitar parts. In the case of Alomar, Carlos Alomar, got to serve what the song wants to address or need to address.
Hmm. Yeah. It's kind of it's interesting that Paul is such a great musician on so many instruments, and then you'll read certain moments when he'll be insecure, like on his bass playing, which is
Mhm,
there'll be times when he'll ask somebody else to play the bass,
mhm.
when so many people look at him as being one of the greatest bass players.
Yeah, that's one of the points I brought up to you during my interview, and he confirmed that it took ages for Paul to overdub a bass part. He confirmed that yes, he asked uh, who's gonna play bass on the album, and so he said, well, for me it was quite incredible to hear because Paul is one of the best bass players in the world. But 1985, 1986 were too difficult years for Paul. There are other aspects that I am highlighting in the book, such as the Live Aid performance. We all know what happened. Then there was Michael Jackson buying Norton songs. All these kind of things add and security to Paul to some extent.
How much did it affect him that he lost the catalog? He likes to make light of it, sometimes
Mm.
he brings up Michael Jackson. He'll say, all in love is fair, it's all business, but deep down, those are his babies, his and John's.
It definitely affected. It was in the middle of August, so the sessions were kind of in a maybe there was a break and stuff, but then he had to go back into the studio. And there's a quote in the book about it, and I think it's one of the assistants that was in the studio at the time, and definitely he highlighted that this episode had an impact on Paul. And I mean, we can understand it.
Hmm.
Uh,
Well, he took,
it's not the best thing to
yeah,
happen.
he took,
Although it's business, it's true that it's business. He
hmm,
knows that it's business, but it was a blow. Yeah, even for me. I mean, when I was 15 when it happened, and I remember I was with my parents on the sea because it was midsummer. And so one morning I have the newspaper, and I read the news, and I was shocked,
hmm,
even though I was just 15 and knew basically nothing about this kind of business things, publishing things. But it seemed very strange to me that Michael Jackson could buy a catalog of songs, and the Beatles catalog seemed very strange to me. So can you imagine being Paul McCartney? You know,
it's not just that, but he was friends with Michael, so
yeah,
they had hits together, they recorded together. You wouldn't think that somebody like that would do that to you. You could just say, well, it's all business. All is fair in business.
yeah. I mean, it's a way to underplay this a bit when the question was raised at the time. I think it's a choice. Well, I don't want to you know mm, to escalate the thing, and then also because you don't. What can you do about it after the fact? I mean,
Right.
you just waited, and then the moment came for him to basically to have the songs back.
Hmm. Yep.
Patience is a virtue.
He's very slowly getting them back.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, during this time, all this was happening, he was taking a break from the album, but he recorded Spies Like Us.
Hmm.
So, and I love the fact that Eddie Rayner was a part of that because he adds a lot to the sound and to the recording. Good timing to have him on.
Mm.
But yeah, I think not everyone is aware that Spies Like Us was in the middle of all these sessions.
Hmm.
But it became a decent size hit, although
Hmm.
a lot of people are very critical of the song. And
No,
what,
I'm not.
no, you're not, but I think for the lyrics basically more than anything else.
Hmm.
But the sound of it and the edginess of it and the screaming at the end, it's I love the song. I wish he'd do it live. But one thing that you present here is the conflicting stories of how this song happened. And that Paul said that John Landis had asked him to write a song for the movie, and John denied that. But Paul
Hmm.
offered a song for the
Yeah.
movie, and because he had success with No More Lonely Nights, he wanted to have another song in a movie and to bounce off that. So, is there one particular version that you believe more than the other?
Well, I can say that John Landis' version is very detailed. So if he invented it, uh, chapeau, as I say in French, because it's a very detailed lie, if it's a lie. Paul is vague enough, so they asked me to do it, and I did it in over 4 sessions, something like that.
Uh-huh.
So you get two different versions that are also more very different in terms of details. So Paul is kind of vague, and John Landis is very detailed. So up to to the readers, or up to anyone to believe one or another. I do not like to say I believe this to I believe Paul or I believe John Landis. I only highlight that they are very different in terms of communication.
Hmm. You leave it up to the reader.
Yeah.
Well, still, I'm glad that Spies Like Us came out, and Paul plays all the instruments except for Eddie Rayner. So,
Yeah, this is big, you know, keyboard chords, very 80s. Yeah, this is very 80s.
yeah.
Yes.
Since you mentioned Live Aid, was the main reason why Angry was changed to have Pete Townsend and Phil Collins on there because they just played at Live Aid?
Probably yes. I mean, he had the chance to meet them there, or to, you know, um, to see portions of the concert. And Phil Collins at the time was a big star, so that was a right occasion to have him on drums just a week after Live Aid. And there's a couple of other mentions of Phil Collins throughout the book, because at some point there were some talk about Phil producing Paul.
Hmm.
So yeah, let's discover uh, these things about Phil Collins, which, by the way, was one of my favorite drummers of all time. I love Genesis. I love what they did back in the 70s mainly. And so, yeah, I
You
mean,
couldn't get any hotter at that moment than him. And not
yeah.
just his own music, but drumming for other people.
Hmm.
And then playing on both sides of the Atlantic for Live Aid.
Yeah, yeah, you did it.
One of them wasn't enough for him. I want to read a comment that you made about the album here. You said, Press to Play is the product of a man and musician who's struggling to view his future, perhaps caught in one of his most difficult moments with all of his weakness exposed. What did you mean by weakness? What weakness?
I mean, this is related to the lyrical aspect,
Hmm,
because you know that when I go through the songs, song by song, um, I do musical analysis, harmonies, instrumentation, stuff like that, and also um, lyrical analysis. So there are a few songs from the sessions. If you want to consider Press to Play uh, as in this vinyl configuration, you
hmm,
know, 10 songs, but obviously I discuss also the other 3 songs that were included in the CD.
right.
So if we look at the lyrics of um, some of the songs, such as Tough on a Tightrope, for
Mm,
example, or Only Love Remains Itself,
right.
or It's Not True, there's a hint also on However Absurd. There's this middle eight or bridge with a very specific lyrics.
Mm,
Well, Paul seems to hint at some difficult or some issues in his relationship with Linda. So he he said something very interesting in an interview to Rolling Stone at the time, and he said something that could be obvious, So, well, we've been in love, we've been out of love.
Mm,
We are a real couple, which I mean, it can be applied to anyone.
right.
You know what I mean? Uh, but when it comes to a personality, public personality, as Paul McCartney, and it comes uh, with a sentence like that, in my opinion, it means that to some extent he wanted to, I don't know, to express uh, the fact that they went through something uh, at the time, and all these hints that the that you can find in the songs that I've mentioned are interesting. So let's um, let's consider Press to Play as a, let me say, something like a middle age crisis kind of
Mm,
album, hmm, something like that. There was something in the relationship that was not um, the best at the time. Linda sang on the album, but not that much. She doesn't play, and so it could be a sign that they were doing uh, something not so closely as before. Because Linda was in Wings before, but she sang a lot on Tug of War, on Pipes of Peace, on Broad Street.
mm.
Uh, she does not sing that much on Press to Play, and I think she also did some kind of solo sessions. I think that was in '84 for Love's Full Glory. And Paul was not involved. So, all these little signs we have we have we have to learn to catch these little things in Paul's songs. And I think the lyrical aspect on Press to Play it's another interesting thing to discover.
So when you're talking about weaknesses and lyrics, you're not talking about the quality of the lyrics. You're talking about showing
Yeah,
his personal relationships.
exactly.
So yeah, of course, we could be reading too much into it too, because that
I mean,
marriage lasted all that time.
that's what these interviews are made for.
No, but I know that line in So However Absurd was something special between us. When we made love, the game was over.
Hmm,
I couldn't say
that's
it.
not bad.
Yeah. So it's deeply personal. Yeah.
It's deeply personal, as typical in often with Paul lyrics. It could be generic, but I mean it's very uh, special lyric to me. So I'm not inclined to think it's so generic. I think it applies to something that he went through.
Hmm. Okay. You also say, and I'm certainly not denying this, Press to Play is a sonic delight, pure 80s pop music made with state-of-the-art machines, tools, and inventions. The most modern sounding album of McCartney's discography, a characteristic only matched in spots by Flowers in the Dirt and New. Why would it,
When it comes to, well, oh, sorry, go on, please.
maybe some of Driving Rain.
Um, well, to my ears, if you if you want to consider press to play as a product of 80s, well, Flowers in the Dirt is to some extent it's not that far. There are a couple of songs on Flowers in the Dirt which are very 80s. I'm thinking about Most of Love, or the production style on a couple of tracks is to me is very 80s. New seems to me very modern. I remember when I heard it for the first time, I thought, well, there's some tracks that are very, you know, uh, filled with contemporary sounds or something like that.
Right.
So that's That's I don't know. Driving Rain to me, it has a more of a live feel. So I consider it more rocky. New and Flowers in the Dirt, maybe because of the multi-producer formula. To my ears, seemed quite similar because the style is different, is all over the place. Different songs, different producers. That's it.
Hmm. Yeah. You say the so-called overproduction is certainly one of the main features of the album for Press to Play. An overabundance, which is typical of the era, and that would be replicated also in Flowers in the Dirt. So what would you consider to be overproduced? I mean, not
Generally speaking, or impressive play.
in Press to Play.
Well, I mean, there are. Um, let me think about a couple of examples. Um, Press is overproduced. I mean, I like the song, but overproduced could mean different things. Could mean uh, too many instruments, or could mean uh, the way you use some instruments. So Press is very 80s, but I think it works. I mean, it was quite a sizable hit at the time. It was number
21.
20, 21 in the US,
Yeah.
21. It was not bad, and there's lots of things, big keyboards. I think there are three, three to four guitar parts. Uh, there's there's drums, there's real drums, but there's also drum machines and other stuff in the percussion or rhythmic part. There's one version has got a bass, the other has got a sequencer. So you can it's but it you can build a song like that, which is very catchy. I
Hmm.
mean, uh, with a different kind of style. And he went for, okay, let's do whatever is possible uh, to enrich the song with this kind of sounds. I mean, to me, it's very, very 80s. With My Brave Face, which came out 3 years later,
Hmm.
sounds to me less dated to some extent. Seems to me more typical of Paul. Press is very 80s, and I think it's overproduced. Um, Let me grab another example. Um, I don't know, maybe I like Stranglehold, but I'm not sure that the horns are the best choice for this track. I'm
Wow.
not sure. I mean, it could have worked perfectly without the horns and maybe only with guitars. That's my opinion,
Okay.
and that's what I could consider overproduced. I mean, let's add an instrument or a section, like in this case, a horn section, when it's not needed. Sometimes you think, well, let's add this, let's add that, because you feel that the song is incomplete or whatever, or maybe because it was just the flavor of the year or of the time, and this kind of things. And I think even you uh, agreed with this. I mean, he was the first to say, "Well, we added lots of things, and we were trying to dress up these songs because the songs were not so good." As you were mentioning before, he was not convinced about the songs, and so he said, "Well, we worked a lot on this."
Hmm.
And so he was first to admit that there's a degree of overproduction. Then I liked the album, and you were mentioning and before it's a sonic delight. Yes, I just put your headphones, people, and listen to this song, this album, because anyway, there's so much to discover, and I did my best to really analyze all the instrumentation and stuff. There's
Mm,
lots of interesting, I think, things to discover, and so that's it.
okay. Well, I respect your opinion. I respect Hugh's opinion. I don't have to agree totally about the overproduction because I'm so used to this album exactly the way it is. I wouldn't change anything about it, but I just think that there's a certain sensibility that Paul has. Not that every single decision he's ever made has been perfect, but I think when it comes to arranging his songs, he has a pretty good idea in his head how a song should go. The one exception I always remember is when Elvis Costello was talking about That Day Is Done, and that Paul wanted it to sound like a human league.
Yeah,
I can't hear that in my head, but
yeah.
um, I like the way all the songs sound on Press to Play. And
Yeah,
what?
but I mean, let me add this, Ken. Well, overproduction, yes, that doesn't mean necessarily it's not derogatory,
Mm,
necessarily derogatory, because when it comes to a ballad, and I'm thinking about Footprints, which is one of my favorite songs, if not my favorite on the album.
mm,
I mean, it's interesting because they definitely overproduced it a bit, at least, but it's also an interesting way to update uh, the classic acoustic ballad. Could have been without this synth solo in the middle. There's lots of other keyboards, lots of electric guitars. There's a Linn drum. So lots of modern elements, which I think it works. So you can overproduce it a bit, but it could be a nice touch. And I think this is a successful example.
okay. Before I continue, I just want to say that the word dated to me is a derogatory term. That's
Hmm.
how I look at it because I don't know. It's not like I listen to the music of today and certain decades and cut off certain decades. I listen to all of it. And I'm so used to hearing 80s music all the time that I don't think of it as being just from that era. I like the way a lot of the music sounded, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of, Hugh Padgham production from the Police and Genesis and all that.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, but anyway, this is a quote from Hugh Padgham that I wanted your take on the commercial failure of Press to Play.
Hmm.
Said it's a good album, but it seems like people who are into buying a Paul McCartney album like middle of the road stuff, and that's a drag. The other reason is we haven't had a hit single on the album, and we're now in this era where you have to have a hit single, otherwise your album doesn't sell. Well, apart from the hit single uh, comment there, well, how do you feel about what he said about his fan base?
Well, to some extent, he's right because, um, as I point out in the book, Press to Play has got well, there are many aspects or many sides on the music in musical terms to be analyzed when it comes to Press to Play. One is definitely the 80s sound, but then there's other things. For example, the experimental stuff. We can mention Talk More Talk, which is
Mhm,
definitely has an experimental touch, or Pretty Little Head.
mhm,
So we got two quite heavy experimental tracks, 2 out of 10. Uh, or however absurd, there's a definitely an experimental touch in Paul's vocals, for example. So, uh, or just look at the guitars, the guitar sound. There's very uh, uh, rocking guitars on Stranglehold, on However Absurd itself. Angry is kind of a rocker, Move Over Busker.
Sure.
So there's different things to consider. So with the possible exception of McCartney 2, which was experimental, definitely.
Mm.
Um, but it was a solo project, Paul decided to publish this after what happened in Japan and stuff, just for a change, as he likes to do. But press to play is um, it's a difficult to some extent for maybe for the fan base or for part of the fan base of Paul, because it's it's well, when Paul does experimentation, he likes to do strange things as a fireman or twin freaks. He likes to do these things under a pseudonym. Um, Going out with press play, uh, which, as I said before, has got a certain degree of experimentation, meant that Paul, under his own name, put out an album with a good degree of experimentation on it.
Mhm.
Then it wasn't a success commercially.
Right.
And so he reverted back to a more polished style with Flowers in the Dirt. And so Paul himself said that the most difficult thing or the factor that he blamed for Press to Play for being not a success was the that the lyrics were abstract, which in some pieces definitely they are.
Mhm.
So if you put together these things, so the experimental side, maybe a certain harshness in the sound, then he, and then uh, Paul likes to think about his uh, success in commercial terms, in sales. He rightly so, I think. It's very important for someone like Paul McCartney to be aware of the success of his music because it's made for having a commercial success. So when it does not succeed, then he was more doubtful than when he started. So at some point he said, "Well, okay, what I have to do." And so I think the mainly what you said is a very acute observation. That's
Mm.
what I think.
I think he's partly true. You can't say that about every McCartney fan, but I always think of this interview that John Lennon gave in 1971, which has had a profound effect on me in the way that I think. Because at the end of the interview, he said that the main problem, and this is answering uh, people being upset about the Beatle breakup, is that people don't like change.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
the overground is just as straight as the underground or whatever, and they don't like change. And there are a lot of people who are used to the old McCartney sound, whether it was at the Beatles or the Wings days, and all of a sudden he's doing heavy drums and synthesizers, and they don't care for that. Just like there
Hmm.
are some people who grew up in the 60s and 70s and were turned off completely by disco or punk rock. There are some people who shut off their minds to this new music of 80s music and the way that it was produced, and they didn't like it. They'd much rather Paul make another Band on the Run or maybe
Hmm.
Tug of War for that example. So to put out Press to Play was daring, but a lot of his fans just couldn't accept change in that direction.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I agree with you. Yeah, it is. Change is always difficult for anyone, for
Mm,
the artists, for the fans, for casual listeners, because the fact is that you get to aim to having a larger fan base. You cannot rely, at least at the time, these days maybe it's different, but you have to, and Paul anyway aims to have a larger fan base. So if only I don't know, if you only sell half a million copies instead of 4 million is a problem.
Mm,
Is a problem because you know that that something went wrong, and you want to reach a wider audience. That's the. I mean, you like press to play. I like press to play. So there are many people who like press to play, and that's one of the reasons why I did this book,
mm.
because there are many people who like this album. You know, this also this um, unexplored records and stuff. I think people are interested also to know more about uh, this kind of things. But the artist wants to reach a wider audience, so that's why Paul has always been, let's say, shy about press to play and didn't talk that much about it in later years.
Mm.
Doesn't like to remind himself of something that was not successful.
The album Electric Arguments, while it didn't chart very well, certainly was critically well received, and that's very experimental right there.
Yeah,
All the firemen
but it
stuff.
was a but it was Fireman. So for him, it's a kind of a liberating to have a pseudonym, because if it doesn't have success, he said, "Well, okay, it's a fireman. It's not Paul McCartney." And if it has good reviews and stuff, he says, "Well, it's nice having something successful under a pseudonym." There was a review, I think, about Electric Arguments, which said exactly this, something like, "I don't understand why Paul McCartney uh, has to mask himself behind a pseudonym and does not do this kind of album under his own name." Basically, that was the meaning of this review. I have reported it anyway in my Music is Ideas Volume 2.
Hmm.
So that's the root of uh, of this let me say issue. Paul likes to be experimental, but the risk which is connected to the experimentation, which is having a limited uh, commercial success, is something that doesn't know exactly how to manage.
But I also think Paul is wise enough to know that what people are expressing right now in the moment may not be what people are saying about him long after he's gone, about some of these records. They may look at Press to Play as being a big jump forward. Same thing with all the Fireman records and
Mhm.
an album like,
Well, things and perception will change when that moment will come.
right. All right, a few more things I just want to get into here. You bring up the fact, and it's on a lot of tracks on Press to Play, the use of Lin drum programming. Can you
Mhm.
explain what that brought to this album? Because it's on, like I said, so many songs. What did that do for all these songs?
Well, in which terms are you asking me?
Well, I mean the people who are drumming on the album, like Jerry
Hmm.
Marotta, used it.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, what did that bring in the arrangements of the songs and the sounds of the songs,
Hmm.
as Paul was really adapting to a lot of the technology of that moment, all the new stuff.
Well, well, we have to consider that Paul had his first Lindrum, the first model, was given to him by Stevie Wonder when they worked together on Tug of War. So he was quite accustomed to work with the Lindrum since 1981. Then the Lindrum became the big thing over uh, the first half of the 80s and even later. So, there were many hits completely built on a Lindrum, because this programming and the sound, it was very, the Lindrum is, to some extent, is very simple compared to what we can imagine today. And so Jerry Marotta has got his own model of the Lindrum, and well, he's used it on footprints that we mentioned before, and I think it's one of the best examples of these new devices integrated into Paul's music. You got this backbeat programmed as a accompaniment to the acoustic guitars, and it works perfectly. It works perfectly. I mean, there's Lindrums and programming also on Talk More Talk, which
Mm,
is a very percussive track. So one of the aspects I have highlighted in the book is that uh, Press to Play is a very percussive, rhythmic
mm,
kind of album. So the Lindrum is one of the elements we were mentioning before. Jerry Marotta with his powerful drumming, and then on the other side you got this all this programmed rhythms, which is not very um, common uh, in Paul's discography. And I think this is a classic things that you can say, okay, 80s sound uh, when it comes to this kind of things, this kind of devices applied to the right songs, I like very much. I like very much this kind of inventions, or as I was saying before, this kind of updates. So the use of Lindrum, which is used on some songs, but compared to albums that were produced at the time, is very limited. They are not using the Lindrum on every single track because you had Jerry Marotta, but it was a clever thing also on Jerry Marotta's side,
mm.
uh, programming rhythms and adding percussion and stuff instead of doing a classic accompaniment on I don't know, on the rim shot or whatever. They use the Lindrum, so that's kind of experimental, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Hey, I love all the sounds on this album, so I'm not complaining. A few more things we'll talk about. Well, talk more talk. Interesting how you said that this song is partly derived from It's Not On. And I never
Mhm.
thought about that, but when you listen to a lot of the different voices on It's Not On, how it's played with, like with the pitch of a certain voice, and
Yeah.
hear that at the very beginning and end of Talk More Talk. So, but you hear something in the music itself that reminds you of It's Not On.
Yeah, the melody was definitely adapted from this little song that we discovered 10 years ago because it was released for the first time in 2015 on the Pipes of Peace reissue. And yeah, the melody, the rhythm is different, the pace is different and stuff, but the melody is there. So you can try it. You can try it on your own, but it's there. It's there, and it's interesting because I mean, Paul said about talk more talk. Well, I have done this basically in one day, just in one day, all by myself and stuff. So he definitely had something he wanted to work on, and he modified this, and then the song is completely different. There's other parts that were not in the It's Not On demo, but the verse, I think it was there. But you know, uh, hats off to Paul because it's not easy even to take a portion of a song that you already have and turned into something completely different because it took me a while to notice this. It's
Right.
not that immediate, but then
Well, I'm glad you brought that out because It's Not On is such a strange track to me. It's funny how there's so many books that are out there on Paul about what he's recorded and what's unreleased, and It's Not On wasn't in any of them. None of us knew a thing about this song, at least as far as I know. So, yeah, I guess I'll listen even more carefully to notice the similarity that you're mentioning. I like what is said about Only Love Remains, which was the last song recorded for the album. Hugh Padgham said the rhythm section was recorded in the morning, the orchestra came in the afternoon to overdub the strings. Then in the evening, Paul and all the musicians recorded it live together, which was the one they used.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very McCartney. It's very McCartney. Uh, I don't remember at the moment, but I'm sure it's written in the book, which was a take they chose. Probably was a combination because when Paul did the basic track, you have a certain feeling. Then when uh, you record with the orchestra live, you have a different feeling, and then you can combine the best bits. And I think you went into detail also saying that Paul did 2 or 3 takes, vocal takes, and
Mm,
then they did basically a compilation of the best moments. But he said that these 3 takes were perfect,
right.
so they only had you know had to choose because of the feeling, but the maybe the notes were, but the pitch was perfect, and
Mm.
maybe there was a bit more of sentimental feeling in some spots. And so with a singer as Paul, you have the you have plenty of choice.
Sure wish I was in the studio when that was going on.
Oh yeah,
It's my favorite love song from him from his solo career. Just think it's a
yeah.
song of perfection.
Oh yeah, I like the song. It's. I mean, we can spend 20 minutes talking about this song. There's a lyrical aspect, as I was saying before, which I wanted to analyze in depth. So it's worth reading. I think this lyrical analysis. I also spotted a small similarity with My Love.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it's worth to read these notes I took about this 2 songs, love songs.
Yeah, can tease everybody about that. And I will add one other song to that list for what you're referring to, and that's Here Today. If
What
you
are you
can.
talking about?
Oh, Don, we're not going to give it away. Let everybody else try to figure it out.
All
Hey,
right.
can you just very briefly, because I guess you heard these. You mentioned this book that came out, the things we do for love. Was that what it's called?
Hmm.
Things I do for love.
Yeah.
And there are these jams or made up songs in the studio
Hmm.
that I
Hmm.
never heard of. One of which Alan Kozin, my co-host on Things We Said Today, will be pleased to know a song called Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Hmm.
Oh, and Preacher. You've heard these songs, right?
Yeah, because they are in the book. I mean, this book of Eric Stewart, I invite people to grab it because I think it's available, still available, but only in a electronic format. Never went out in on paper, so it
Hmm.
was an iBook, I think an Apple format. So inside the book there were a couple of pages when you have to click and you listen to the song. So there are this 4 or 5 jams. So
Yes.
you click and they are in the book. So that was one of the reasons why I think I had bought the book way back. I'm not sure because I don't know if it was clear to me that there were some audio files. I think so. Maybe in the description they said there were audio files within the book. And I said, well, okay, it's interesting anyway. It's Eric Stewart live, and so I want to read it. And this silly kind of thing that you click and you can hear songs within a book. That's so we can say they have been published, and that's why I've said that the release happened in 2017 because they were inside Eric Stewart's book.
Okay. Are these really
Very silly, very silly kind of things anyway. But you know, everything that comes out is worth listening to.
boring? Sure. Yeah. So let's just close by asking you the final question of whether or not you think Press to Play is an album that's appreciated more today, or is it pretty much the same as it was in 1986?
It seems to me that is more appreciated now. It seems to me because I received a lot of attention about this book. I think people are following all the updates I'm giving on Instagram and Facebook and stuff. I have done lots of reels to promote the book, some of them with original audio taken from the interviews with Carlos Salomar, Jerry Marotta, Hugh Padgham. So I think it's a way to delve into the all this the aspect of um, of uh, of the album, and it seems to me it was it's out since early June, and it seems to me from the sales that definitely people are appreciating Press to Play more than 40 years ago. So I'm very happy.
You think he'll ever do anything from this album live on stage?
No, not at this point. I think
Hmm.
we all know that he just did Only Love Remains. Probably someone asked me in another interview which was a song that he could have played on the Paul McCartney World Tour 89, 90. And my answer was Only Love Remains, which it did in a couple of shows in 1986. Could have stayed there, very intimate moment, something like that. Could have stayed, but it's the only one. Uh, then if he, I mean, now little chance to see many uh, differences in the set list, but now it's another era. So
This is true.
I don't think there's any chance. The only chance could be that Paul surrenders inverted commas to do a show with deep cuts and having fans selecting 30 songs never done before, and they do a poll, and he goes into the rehearsal room with his band, and they do a special show, which is could be it could be something like a unplugged, or it could be you know, maybe a televised venue, something like that, something like I don't know, Paul as never before, never played songs by Paul McCartney. It it would be a success. But that's the only chance at this point.
Yeah. We did a show on one of my podcast things we said today where we each came up with our dream Paul McCartney concert. And mine was just the idea that you said, all songs he's never done live before, whether it's Beatles, Wings, solo, whatever. And I'm aware that it's never going to happen. Maybe I should
Well,
say never. But I even included songs he wrote for other artists, like Do a World Without Love, or
mhm.
On the Wings of a Nightingale. Yeah, that would be a dream for
No, I'm not ruling out. I think it's not possible when it comes to the big tours. So the set list is stays, and maybe if there's a new album, a couple of tracks, uh, they are flown in. But maybe just a special concert. Uh, this is still possible, I think. Just one, just one gig. It's still possible.
Would he work this band, put all this work together for a show that only happens once?
Why not? I mean, we don't know. We don't know how many songs they rehearsed, and they never uh, and they
Never
did
perform.
not perform over these years. Someone mentioned the backseat of my car. I think that was Brian Ray said, "Well, we rehearsed it, but we never performed performed it." So, I mean, why not? If it's a special night, you can spend a couple of months rehearsing just for fun and say, "Okay, let's do it." With Paul, you never know.
Hmm. Okay. Well, Luca, it's always a pleasure having you here. Once
Thank
again,
you, Ken.
this is the new book for Press to Play, and then get all of his other books. And I'm
It's just a mention. It's there's two formats this time. It's paperback and hardcover. It's colored. It's in colored images inside. So yeah, it's the same series of Band on the Run, and there will be more to come on Paul on the series from my side. Next one will be at the end of the year. I'm not disclosing it now, but maybe in a few weeks I will tell you more.
well,
It will be.
you have to finish your book on Ringo.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I will.
Can't
I
leave it
will.
like, halfway done.
I'm working on many things, on many things. So don't worry. Ringo was part one. That would be volume two, hopefully next year.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us and being here again on the channel. Thanks
Thanks, Ken.
everybody for watching. Thanks to all the new subscribers, by the way. I appreciate your being here for all my Beatle programming. And again, thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time. Take care. Press to
Press to play.